Friday, January 31st, 2020 at 10:32 p.m., Dr. Fauci gets an email from Christian Anderson. Christian Anderson's a British researcher who's received numerous grants from NIH. Two really important sentences are in that email. Two sentences that get Dr. Fauci's attention. The first is this: the unusual features of the virus make up a really small part of the genome. So one has to look really closely at all the sequences to see that some of the features look engineered. Again, this is January 31st, 2020. Second sentence: Eddie, Bob, Mike, and myself all find the genome inconsistent with expectations from evolutionary theory. Email arrives 10:32 to Dr. Fauci on January 31st, 2020. 2 hours later at 12:29 in the morning, Dr. Fauci sends an email to his top deputy, Mr. Hugh Auchincloss. Guy has worked for Fauci for 15 years, part of his inner circle. Sends it, subject line says important in all capital letters. He attaches a paper on gain-of-function research written by Dr. Barrick and Dr. Shi. Dr. Shi, of course, is the so-called Bat Lady, Batwoman, the lady who does research in the Wuhan, China lab. This email, Dr. Fauci says, again, to his top deputy, it is essential that we speak this AM. Keep your cell phone on, read this paper. You will have tasks to do today that must be done. Notice the intensity. Notice the focus. I mean, this is the house is on fire email here. Now, 2 hours after that, at 2:48 in the morning, Dr. Fauci's busy this morning. 12:29, that email he sent to Dr. Auchincloss, his top deputy. 2 hours later at 2:48 in the morning, he sends another email, this one to Robert Kadlec, Assistant HHS Secretary, Trump appointee, not part of his inner circle, and he attaches a different article to this email, one that says the virus came from an animal, that downplays any lab leak theory. Now, again, notice the tone of this one. Bob, this just came out today. Gives a balanced view. Best, Tony. I mean, totally different from the previous. This is one like, oh, if you get a chance, read this, gives a balanced view. So the tone is different, but also that sentence, gives a balanced view, it's not true either. That's just not accurate. This article downplays, as I said, the lab leak theory, emphasizes evolutionary cause to the virus. What happens next? What happens next? Later that same morning at 11:47 a.m., Dr. Fauci's deputy gets back to him. I just want to read you this whole email. The paper you sent me, the one he sent him on that was written by the virologist from Wuhan, China, and Dr. Barrick. The paper you sent me says the experiments were performed before the gain-of-function pause, but have since been reviewed and approved by NIH. Christian Anderson's a not sure what that means, since Emily, someone else who works for Dr. Fauci, two really important sentences are in that email. No coronavirus work has gone through the P3 framework, which of course is the oversight body. The unusual features of the virus make up a really small part of the gain-of-function research. So one has to look really closely at all the frameworks to see that some will try to determine if we have any distant ties to this work of January 31st, 2020. She will try to determine if our fingerprints are on Eddie, any Bob, of this. Mike, and myself all find the genome. All these emails happen in 13 hours. So 13 hours after Dr. Fauci gets the initial email from Christian Anderson saying, looks like this virus is engineered, not consistent with evolutionary theory. 2 hours later, Dr. Fauci 2 hours later at 12:29 in the morning, Dr. Fauci knows there's a lethal virus on the loose that started in Wuhan, China. Mr. Hugh Auchincloss. He knows the American taxpayers have worked for Fauci for gain-of-function research, part of his inner Wuhan, China. Sends it. Third, he knows that the research grant didn't go through the required oversight. He attaches a paper on gain-of-function research engineered, written by Dr. Barrick and Dr. Shi. Dr. Shi, of course, is the so-called Bat Lady, Batwoman, the lady who does research. He may have ties to this work in China lab. His fingerprints, in fact, may be on Dr. Fauci says, again, to his top deputy, Dr. Fauci it is essential that we speak this AM. Whatever. Keep your cell phone on. He organizes a conference call for later that same day. I mean, this is the busiest 24 hours I think I've ever done. Notice the intensity. He organizes a conference call, 12 people on the call. I mean, this is the house is on fire. 11 virologists from around the world. Now, 2 hours after that, who've gotten millions of American tax dollars over the past several years. Dr. Fauci's busy this morning. 12:29, that email
two Americans on the list, Tony Fauci
and one other.
His top
Most
deputy,
of them from around
2
the world,
hours
as I
later
said.
at 2:48 in the morning.
I think the first thing you
another
notice is
email,
who's not
this
on the
one
call.
to Robert Cadlick.
Who's not
Assistant
on the
HHS
list?
Secretary.
Is Dr.
Trump
Cadlick on the
appointee,
list?
not
The
part
guy
of
he
his
sent the
email to at 3 in the
and
morning?
he attaches a different article
Dr.
to this
Redfield,
email.
the head of CDC?
One that says the virus
Dr.
came from
Girard,
an
who's
animal
with us
that
today,
downplays
Assistant
any lab
Secretary
leak
at HHS
theory.
at the time?
Now, again,
Dr.
notice
Burks,
the tone
the lady
of
who's
this
soon
one.
to be COVID
Bob,
response
this just
coordinator?
came out today.
In fact,
Gives a
there's
balanced
no one
view,
from the government
best
on the call
Tony.
except Tony Fauci.
I mean, totally different
Tony
from the
Fauci
previous.
and
This is
11
one like,
other
oh, if you get
individuals who got
chance,
a
read
bunch of
this,
American
gives a
tax
balanced
dollars
view.
over the
So
years.
the tone is different, but also
What
that
happened on the
sentence
conference
gives a balanced
call?
view. It's
The
not
short
true
answer is
either.
we don't know.
That's just
We don't
not
know what they
accurate.
talked
This
about.
article
Maybe I got a-
downplays,
I think
as
we got
I
a good
said,
idea.
the
We
lab
don't know
leak
for
theory,
sure.
emphasizes
But we do know what happened
evolutionary
4
cause
days
to the
later.
virus. What happens
4 days
next?
later,
What
February
happens
4th,
next?
later that
2020,
same morning, Christian Anderson,
Later that
the
same
guy who
morning at
started it all, who said the
11:47
virus looks
a.m.,
engineered, Christian Anderson said this
Dr.
4 days
Fauci's
later.
deputy gets back to him.
Quote, the crackpot
Just wanna
theories
read you
going
this whole
around at
email.
the moment relate
The
to
paper
this
you
virus
sent
being
me,
somehow
the one he sent
engineered.
him on, that was
That
written
is
by
demonstrably
the
false.
virologist
Close quote.
from Wuhan, China, and
What?
Dr. Barrick. The paper you
In
sent me
4
says
days,
the
this guy
experiments
went
were
from
performed
this looks
before the gain
engineered
of
to now
function
that's
caused,
demonstrably
but
false.
have since
4
been
days he went from this
reviewed
isn't
and
consistent
approved
with
by
evolutionary
NIH.
theory. Now we know it's
Not
totally
sure what that
evolutionary.
means, since Emily,
But it
someone
gets
else who
even
works for
better.
Dr. Fauci,
It gets
is
even better.
sure
Mr. Anderson
that no
and 3 of
coronavirus
the other
work has
people
gone
on
through
this
the P3
call
framework, which of course
write
is
an
the
article a
oversight
few
body
weeks later
that's
that
supposed
says
to approve
COVID is
any
not a
grant dollars
laboratory
going for
construct.
gain of function research. No coronavirus work has
And
gone
while
through
they're
the
writing
P3
that
framework.
article, there's an email
Final
from
sentence,
March 6th
she will try to
where
determine
Mr.
if
Anderson
we have any
offers
distant
to
ties to
let
this work
Dr.
abroad.
Fauci
She will try
edit
to
the
determine if
article
our
before it's
fingerprints are
published.
on any of this.
And here's the kicker.
All
Here's the
these
kicker.
emails happen in 13
When
hours.
the article is
so
published,
13 hours after Dr. Fauci gets the initial email from
cites it
Christian
at a
Anderson
White House
saying,
press
looks like
conference
this
when
virus
he
is
is
engineered,
asked
not
by a
consistent with
reporter
evolutionary
about the
theory,
origin of the virus.
Dr.
Cites
Fauci
the
knows some
very
important
article
facts.
he put in
First,
motion on the conference call,
Dr.
and
Fauci
he was
knows
allowed
there's a
to
lethal
edit
virus on the
at the
loose
White
that
House,
started in
where
Wuhan,
he's supposed
China.
to be giving the American
Second,
people the truth.
he knows the American
He
taxpayers
references
have
an article
funded
that he
gain of function
manufactured.
research in Wuhan,
Now,
China.
maybe
Third,
I'm
he
wrong
knows
about
that
all
the
this.
research
Maybe it
grant
didn't
didn't
work
go
out
through
this
the
way.
required
I
oversight
think I'm
board.
right.
Fourth, he
Maybe
knows
it
the
didn't work out
virus,
this
quote,
way.
looks engineered
But it would have been
and,
nice, Mr.
quote,
Chairman,
not
if
consistent
Dr.
with
Fauci would
evolutionary
come today
theory.
and answer our questions.
And finally,
he could have
fifth,
come here and
Dr.
defend
Fauci
himself, but he
knows
didn't have the courage to do it.
he may
you know
have
else who
ties to
wouldn't
this
come?
work in China.
Remember that
His
email about the
fingerprints,
P3
in fact,
framework?
may be on this.
We invited Dr. Hassel to come
So
too.
what does Dr.
He's
Fauci
the
do
individual who
next? After he
chairs
says,
that
"Oh,
oversight board.
whatever,"
We invited him
what
to
does
come
he do
today too.
next?
And
He
wouldn't
organizes
come.
a conference call for later that same
I'm
day.
convinced
And this is
these
the
guys
busiest 24
knew
hours
right
I think
from the
I've ever
get-go what the truth
He organizes
was,
a conference
and
call,
they
misled
12
the
people
American
on the
people.
call. Here's the other thing.
Dr.
You know that
Fauci
conference
and
call?
11
That
virologists from
conference
around
call?
the world.
We got the emails regarding
Virologists
the
who've gotten
conference call
millions
from
of
February
American
2nd.
tax dollars over the past several years.
All these guys
Now
were
look at
emailing
this
back and
list.
forth. They were on that
Here's a
conference
list
call.
of people.
Here's
There's only
what we
2
got.
Americans on the list, Tony
The FOIA
Fauci and one
request.
other. Most
Here's
of them
all
from
their
around the world,
emails.
as I said.
Every
I think the first thing you notice
thing
is who's
is
not on the
redacted.
call.
Every single
Who's
thing
not
is
on the
redacted
list?
about what took place
Is
in
Dr.
that conference
Cadlick
call.
on the list?
Because I'm convinced
The guy
it
he
was
sent
at
the
that
email to
conference
at 3 in the
call where they
morning?
said we got to
Is
cover
Dr.
our
Redfield
tracks.
the head of CDC?
And again,
Dr.
maybe I'm
Girard, who's
wrong.
with us today, Assistant
Maybe I'm
Secretary
wrong.
at HHS at the time.
Dr. Fauci could have been sitting right
Dr.
there
Burks, the
and
lady
answer
who's
our
soon to be
questions, and he
COVID
wouldn't
response
come today.
coordinator.
I yield back.
In fact, there's no
Thank you,
one
Mr.
from the
Jordan,
government
and let
on the
record
call
reflect
except Tony
that Dr.
Fauci.
Fauci was invited.
Tony Fauci and 11 other
Friday
individuals who got a
afternoon
bunch of
to
American
decline.
tax dollars over the years. What happened on the conference call? The short answer is we don't know. We don't know what they talked about. I mean, I think we got a good idea. We don't know for sure, but we do know what happened 4 days later. 4 days later, February 4th, 2020, Christian Anderson, the guy who started it all, who said the virus looks engineered, Christian Anderson said this 4 days later. Quote, the crackpot theories going around at the moment relate to this virus being somehow engineered. That is demonstrably false, close quote. What? In 4 days, this guy went from this looks engineered to now that's demonstrably false. 4 days, he went from this isn't consistent with evolutionary theory. Now we know it's totally evolutionary. But it gets even better. It gets even better. Mr. Anderson and 3 of the other people on this call write an article a few weeks later that says COVID is not a a laboratory construct. And while they're writing that article, there's an email from March 6 where Mr. Anderson offers to let Dr. Fauci edit the article before it's published. And here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. When the article is published, Dr. Fauci cites it at a White House press conference when he is asked by a reporter about the origin of the virus. Cites the very article he put in motion on the conference call and he was allowed to edit. At the White House, where he's supposed to be giving the American people the truth, he references an article that he manufactured. Now, maybe I'm wrong about all this. Maybe it didn't work out this way. I think I'm right. Maybe it didn't work out this way. But it would have been nice, Mr. Chairman, if Dr. Fauci would come today and answer our questions. He could have come here and defended himself, but he didn't have the courage to do it. And you know who else wouldn't come? Remember that email about the P3 framework? We invited Dr. Hassel to come too. He's the individual who chairs that oversight board. We invited him to come today too, and he wouldn't come. I'm convinced these guys knew right from the get-go what the truth was, and they misled the American people. Oh, here's the other thing. You know that conference call? That conference call? We got the emails regarding the conference call from February 2nd. All these guys were emailing back and forth. They were on that conference call. Here's what we got on the FOIA request. Here's all their emails. Every single thing is redacted. Every single thing is redacted about what took place in that conference call, because I'm convinced it was at that conference call where they said, we got to cover our tracks. And again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. But Dr. Fauci could have been sitting right there and answering our questions, and he wouldn't come today. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan, and let the record reflect that Dr. Fauci was invited Friday afternoon. He declined.